A 7-year-old girl walked into the tallest building in the city, clutching a job application. Not for herself, for her mother. What happened next would change everything. Lily Anderson stood silently beneath the towering glass facade of Elmridge Capital. She was barely 4 feet tall, dressed in a neatly ironed blue dress and white cardigan, the outfit her mother had laid out the night before. In her hands, she clutched a worn leather portfolio, too big for her small arms but heavy with purpose. Inside the gleaming marble lobby, men and women in suits moved quickly, speaking into phones, their heels clicking like clockwork. No one noticed the little girl at first, until she stepped up to the front desk, raised herself on tiptoes, and spoke clearly. "Excuse me, I have a 9 a.m. appointment with Mr. Nathan Cole." The receptionist blinked, confused. "I'm sorry, sweetie, are you lost? Where are your parents?" Lily took a breath and straightened her shoulders. "My mom is Claire Anderson. She had a job interview today for the project manager position, but she's in the hospital now, so I'm here in her place." Just a few steps away, a man paused. Nathan Cole, CEO of Elmridge Capital, known across the industry as one of the coldest, most calculated minds in finance, slowly turned around. He approached the desk with calm authority. "Diane, what's going on here?" he asked. The receptionist hesitated. "This little girl says she's here for her mother's interview." Nathan looked down at Lily, taking in the pigtails, the nervous hands clutching the leather folder, and the steady, honest eyes looking back at him. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lily Anderson, sir. My mom taught me to always look people in the eye when I speak." A strange flicker crossed Nathan's face. Not amusement, exactly. Something older. Something buried. "And where's your mom now?" "Northwestern Hospital. She couldn't breathe last night, but the doctors say she'll be okay. She stayed up all night finishing her presentation just in case. I brought it with me." Nathan glanced at his watch. His morning was packed, as always, and yet... "Lily Anderson," he said. "I've conducted over 5,000 interviews in my career, but this is a first." He turned to the receptionist. "Cancel my meetings. Bring her up." The executive floor felt like another planet, all glass and light, with the skyline stretched endlessly behind Nathan's desk. Lily sat politely in a chair that nearly swallowed her whole, unfolding the papers with surprising care. "She was a project manager for 8 years," Lily explained. "She has an MBA and a PMP certification. At her last job, she saved the company over $300,000 on one project. She's really good." Nathan flipped through the documents, every page carefully labeled. Reports, certificates, success stories. "And why does your mother want to work at Elmridge?" he asked, still half in disbelief. "Because we need health insurance," Lily answered simply. "And because she says your company does work that matters." The directness caught him off guard. Most adults danced around questions like that. "Who's watching you while your mom's in the hospital?" he asked, softer now. "Mrs. Winters from next door. She's very old, but I can take care of myself. I pack my own lunch. I walk to school. I know where the hospital billing office is." Nathan leaned back. There was something about this child. Not precocious, not rehearsed. Just real. He pressed the intercom. "Janet, cancel the board presentation and find out which doctor is treating Claire Anderson at Northwestern." Lily blinked. "Are you going to see my mom?" "We are," he said. "I need to meet the woman who raised someone like you." As the elevator doors closed behind them, Lily looked up. "My mom says important people are too busy to help people like us." Nathan glanced down at her. "Well, she's not entirely wrong, but today, you got my full attention." Lily smiled, a shy, toothy smile that carried more warmth than any handshake he'd had in years. Neither of them knew that this moment, this quiet decision in a steel and glass building, would begin to unravel secrets buried for 17 years, and start something bigger than either of them could imagine. Northwestern Memorial Hospital hummed with soft beeps and footsteps as Nathan Cole and Lily stepped through the automatic doors. Nathan, in his tailored charcoal suit and polished shoes, looked completely out of place among nurses in scrubs and family members in sweatshirts holding coffee cups. Lily, on the other hand, moved with quiet confidence. "This way," she said, already leading the way. "I know where the elevators are." Nathan followed, every step echoing louder in his mind than in the hallway. He had walked hundreds of halls like these before, but always as a donor, never as someone personally invested. That was the word the board always used. Personally invested. Like it was a flaw. The elevator chimed. The nurse at the desk on the third floor looked up. "Room 3117, Lily said without hesitation. The nurse glanced at Nathan, about to question him, but stopped when she saw his face. He wasn't someone you stopped. Claire Anderson was propped up in bed, an IV in her arm and oxygen tubes nestled under her nose. Her hair, chestnut brown, was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her face, though pale and tired, still held the strength of someone used to doing everything alone. When she saw Lily in the doorway, her body jerked upright. "Lily? What are you doing here?" Her voice was hoarse, filled with disbelief. "You're supposed to be with Mrs. Winters." "Mama," Lily said quickly, stepping to her bedside. "This is Mr. Cole. I went to your interview and he brought me here." Claire's gaze shifted to the man now standing in the doorway. Recognition flooded her face. "Oh my God," she breathed. "Mr. Cole, I'm so sorry." Nathan stepped forward. "Miss Anderson, your daughter made quite an impression. She came prepared, and I mean that literally." Claire closed her eyes, overwhelmed with shame and awe. "I told her to call the company, not walk into the building. She said you worked all night on your presentation," Nathan added quietly. "Even while you were sick." Claire's shoulders sagged. "We need the job," she said simply. "I didn't want pity. I just wanted the chance to earn it." Nathan pulled a chair up beside her bed. "I've reviewed your portfolio," he said. "Your work is exceptional. You led a team that saved your previous company hundreds of thousands in operational cost. Why haven't you found another position?" Claire hesitated, glancing at Lily, then back at him. "Single mother, no extended family. When I show up to interviews, they see the gaps. They ask vague questions like, how do you manage work-life balance? They don't say it outright, but they wonder if I'll be unreliable." Her voice cracked, not from illness, but from exhaustion. "I've had 8 interviews, 8 rejections, in 2 months." Lily, now sitting beside her mother, gently checked the IV drip like she'd done it a dozen times before. Nathan didn't speak right away. He couldn't. Because suddenly, he remembered Caroline, his late wife. The job applications she'd filled out after Lily, their Lily, was born. The rejections, the way she stared out the window for hours some days, too tired to try again. Claire looked at him, confused by the silence. "Mr. Cole?" He stood, reached into his jacket and handed her a business card. "Have the hospital billing department call that number. Elmridge Capital will cover the balance." Claire's eyes widened. I can't accept this." "Consider it an advance," he replied. "An advance on what?" "Your official interview," he said. "We'll do it properly next Monday. Until then, focus on healing." She looked down at the card, stunned. "But I haven't proven anything yet." Nathan glanced at Lily. "You raised her. That's proof enough." The next 5 days changed the rhythm of Nathan Cole's world. With Claire's reluctant permission, Lily became a quiet presence at Elmridge Capital. Nathan assigned a car to pick her up after school. She spent afternoons in a spare office near his, doing homework with her legs swinging off the chair. No one knew exactly why she was there, but no one dared question the CEO. On Wednesday afternoon, as Nathan walked past her door, he heard her say, "Your operating margins could be better if you restructured the supply chain." He turned back. "Excuse me?" Lily looked up from her math workbook. "That's what Mama says when she's thinking out loud. She lets me help her organize her ideas." Nathan leaned on the doorframe. Most kids read comic books. I do too, Lily shrugged. But Batman's not real. Margins are. He laughed, genuinely. By Thursday, his assistant Janet began to notice something unusual. You check your watch now, she said, placing files on his desk, always around 3 p.m. Nathan didn't look up. She reminds me of someone. Of course she does, Janet said softly. That afternoon, Nathan found Lily in the break room giving marketing advice to the design team. Kids at my school like brighter colors, she said. Not boring blues, maybe more orange. The head of marketing scribbled it down like gospel. Nathan cleared his throat. Miss Anderson, he said, it's time for our daily debrief. It had become a ritual. Every day at 4:30, Lily sat across from him and told him what she'd learned and how her mom was doing. On Friday, Lily took her seat as usual, opened her chocolate milk, and said quietly, Mama's coming home tomorrow. That's good news, Nathan said. Lily nodded, then looked up more serious than usual. Will you still want to talk to me after she starts working here? He was caught off guard. Why wouldn't I? She shrugged. Dad didn't want to talk to me anymore. He left when I was 3. Mama said it wasn't because of me, but sometimes. I wonder. Nathan's heart ached in a way he hadn't felt in years. He reached into his drawer and pulled out a silver-framed photograph, one he hadn't touched in nearly 2 decades. This was my daughter, he said, turning the frame toward Lily. Her name was Lily, too. The little girl studied the image. A toddler with light brown curls and eyes that mirrored Nathan's own. Where is she now? Nathan's voice was distant. She and her mom passed away a long time ago. Lily paused, then asked softly, Is that why you look sad sometimes when you see me? The room went still, and in that stillness, Nathan realized something had shifted. Not just in his schedule, not just in his office, but in the way he saw the world. The day Claire Anderson walked through the doors of Elmridge Capital as a hired employee, no one knew quite what to make of her. Her navy blue suit was pressed but dated. Her heels were worn at the tips, and her eyes, though clearer than they had been in the hospital, still carried the faint bruises of worry that mothers like her never fully erased. Nathan Cole watched from his office window as she checked in at the front desk. She didn't look around, didn't fumble. She carried herself like someone who had worked twice as hard for half as much, and still stood tall. She had no idea how many board members were already talking behind closed doors. No idea that a senior partner had sent Nathan an email that morning with a thinly veiled warning. The board is watching, carefully. But Claire didn't come to prove herself to the board. She came for her daughter, and that, Nathan thought, was exactly why she would prove herself. The morning passed in a blur of onboarding documents, system logins, and internal policy reviews. Claire asked pointed, efficient questions. She spoke rarely, but when she did, people listened. By noon, she was already identifying gaps in the company's current project workflow. I'd recommend segmenting the team by life cycle phase, she said during her first strategy meeting. You're losing time in transition zones. Her suggestion was met with mild surprise and scribbled notes. In the corner of the break room, Lily was sitting quietly at the desk Nathan had assigned her, a small corner near Claire's office with a view of the trees outside and a stack of books handpicked by Janet. Nathan walked by and paused at the doorway. Settling in, Miss Anderson? Lily looked up from her drawing of a volcano labeled Science Fair Entry. I'm good. I made a new friend today. Oh? Mr. Davidson in operations. I helped him solve a supply chain bottleneck. It was just math. Nathan smiled, then nodded toward the office door. And your mom? She's nervous, Lily said simply. But she'll be fine. She always is. Nathan's smile softened. It was terrifying how much this girl understood. He turned to leave, but paused. Lily? Yeah? He hesitated. You ever think about what you want to be when you grow up? Lily nodded immediately. I want to help moms like mine. Build a place where they don't have to choose between a job and their kids. Nathan blinked. He had built billion-dollar structures, expanded to 5 continents, acquired and merged and grown and optimized. But he had never thought of building that. Not until now. By the end of the week, Claire had already made her mark. She reorganized an overdue project delivery into 3 tiers of urgency. She spotted a budgeting error that had slipped through 2 managers, and she never, not once, left the office before checking Lily's homework and walking her to the lobby. Some people whispered. "She's only here because of the CEO," one analyst muttered. "She's got a kid running around the building like it's a daycare," another added, but Nathan didn't care, because every afternoon, at exactly 4:30 p.m., Lily would appear outside his office with something she'd learned that day. On Friday, she entered with a serious expression and a binder nearly her size. "Today, I learned what an RFP is." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "And what does RFP stand for?" "Request for proposal," she recited proudly. "It's like when you ask other people to help you build something. You give them the idea, and they show you how they do it." He nodded, impressed. "That's a good definition." Lily smiled. "I thought maybe, if we ever want to build that thing I told you about, the place for moms, we could do an RFP." Nathan leaned back in his chair, both moved and stunned. From anyone else, the idea might sound naive. From her, it sounded possible. That night, Nathan found himself driving not to his penthouse but to a quiet townhouse in Lincoln Park. Claire had invited him for dinner, not as her boss, not as the CEO, but as someone who had once said yes to a girl holding her mother's résumé. Lily opened the door, wearing an apron dusted with flour. "I helped make lasagna," she announced proudly. Inside, the small home was cluttered with life. Art projects taped to the fridge, books stacked on chairs, a blanket fort half collapsed in the corner. Claire emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. "Sorry about the mess," she said. "The volcano project exploded." Nathan laughed, more freely than he had in weeks. Dinner was loud and imperfect and warm. They talked about everything: school, work, Lily's theory that chocolate milk improves brain function. Nathan found himself listening, not analyzing, responding, not deflecting, and, for the first time in 17 years, he felt present. As Claire cleared the dishes, she said, almost casually, "You're different here." Nathan looked up. "Here? In this house? With us? You seem more human." He didn't respond at first. Then he said, quietly, "Maybe I forgot how to be anything else." Claire didn't press, but her silence wasn't empty. It held understanding and something else. Possibility. Later that night, as he drove home, Nathan passed the illuminated tower of Elmridge Capital. He had built that tower brick by brick, but for the first time he wondered if the most important thing he'd ever build might not be made of glass or steel at all. Monday morning arrived with the sharp precision of every other day at Elmridge Capital. Espresso machines humming by 7:15, meeting rooms booked by the hour, and elevator screens flickering with stock tickers before the markets even opened. But beneath the surface, something had shifted. Nathan Cole could feel it before he stepped out of his car. The smiles were tighter, the greetings shorter, and the whispers just a little harder to ignore. Inside the executive conference room, Claire stood at the head of the table, leading her first project review. She was calm, articulate, and exacting. Her new team, half curious, half cautious, followed her lead as she mapped out revised timelines and leaner work groups. At the far end of the room, Victoria Langford, Elmridge's longtime HR director, tapped her pen against her notepad. She didn't interrupt, not yet, but her eyes narrowed every time Claire spoke. When the meeting ended, Victoria lingered behind, then followed Nathan into his office without knocking. "You've made a bold choice," she said, closing the door behind her. Nathan didn't look up from his notes. "I've made a smart one." Victoria walked to the window, arms crossed. Do you know what people are saying? I rarely care what people are saying. They're saying you've compromised your objectivity, that you're creating policy based on emotion, that you're letting a child steer the culture of this company. Nathan finally looked up, a child who made more sense about operating margins than 3 of our directors. Victoria's lips tightened. She's 7, Nathan. And yet she sees what we miss. Victoria hesitated, then placed a folder on his desk. What's this? He asked. A formal request from the board to review all recent policy changes, including your so-called Family Forward initiative. Nathan's jaw clenched. And they're calling a closed session this Friday. Gerald Harrington is leading it. The name landed like ice in the room. Gerald Harrington, the former CEO, board elder, and architect of the company's most rigid traditions. The man who had once told Nathan, empathy is a liability. Distance builds power. Nathan leaned back slowly. I see. I'm just the messenger, Victoria added, her tone unreadable. But I wouldn't underestimate Gerald. He thinks you've gone soft, and he's not the only one. That afternoon, Lily waited in her usual spot near her mother's office, working on her science fair poster. It was titled, Volcanoes and the Power Beneath. Nathan stopped by, offering her a juice box and a raised eyebrow. Power beneath, huh? Lily nodded. It means something can look calm, but there's lava underneath. Pressure builds. And one day... She made an explosion motion with her hands. Nathan chuckled. Poetic. But her words lingered longer than they should have. Because she was right. Pressure was building. The next day, Nathan met privately with his oldest friend and CFO, James Whitfield. They sat in the corner of the executive lounge, a place usually reserved for top clients. You're not imagining it, James said quietly. Harrington's been rallying votes. Victoria's feeding him every policy decision you've made in the past 60 days. Nathan folded his arms. They think this is about Claire. It is, James said frankly. To them, she's the wedge, the excuse to question you. They see her as a symbol. She's an employee, Nathan said, his voice sharpening. A brilliant one. Who earned her place? Doesn't matter. James shook his head. This is politics now. Truth comes second. Nathan exhaled slowly. Do I still have the votes? For now. But if they smell blood, it changes fast. There was silence between them. Then James leaned forward. Nathan, I need to ask you something. Are you sure this isn't personal? Nathan blinked. Excuse me? You see something in Claire, and Lily. She reminds you of her. You're Lily. Nathan's throat tightened. James held his gaze. You're a damn good leader. But if they can prove this is about ghosts, not goals, they'll gut you. That night, Nathan didn't go home. He drove to the one place he hadn't been in over a decade, the cemetery outside Oak Ridge. He walked alone beneath the street lamps, stopping at a small headstone with 2 names etched in granite. Caroline, Reynolds, Cole, 1981, 2008. Lily, Evelyn, Cole, 2006, 2008. He stood there, unmoving. No umbrella, no coat, just wind. He finally spoke. A whisper, barely audible. I thought if I built something big enough, loud enough, I wouldn't hear the silence you left behind. His hand brushed over the stone. But this isn't about mourning anymore. He looked up at the sky. It's about fixing what we broke, what I broke, before another Lily grows up thinking she has to be extraordinary just to be seen. Back at Elmridge the next morning, Claire found a small note on her desk. It wasn't typed, it wasn't formal. It simply read, Don't apologize for being exactly who you are. Keep building. NC. She stared at the note for a long time, her fingers resting gently on the paper. Then she opened her laptop and got to work, because in less than 72 hours, the fate of the initiative, and perhaps her future at Elmridge, would be decided. And this time, she refused to be silent. The conference room on the 42nd floor of Elmridge Capital had seen hundreds of board meetings over the years, but not like this. The windows were shaded, the table gleamed. Every leather chair was filled, and at the head of the table, Gerald Harrington sat like a judge preparing to hand down a sentence. Nathan Cole entered without expression, his dark suit immaculate, his movements measured. Beside him walked Claire Anderson, composed, professional, and for the first time truly seen. The board members turned, surprised. No one had expected him to bring her, especially not Gerald. "This meeting," he began coolly, "was intended to review recent developments in corporate policy." Nathan took his seat. "Then let's review." Victoria Langford cleared her throat. "Mr. Cole, the Family Forward Initiative has raised concerns about efficiency, image, and—" "Let's be honest, Victoria," Nathan interrupted. "You're not concerned about efficiency. You're concerned about control." A murmur swept the room. Gerald leaned forward, lacing his fingers. "Nathan, you've always valued order, metrics, tradition, but lately your decisions have deviated." Nathan didn't blink. "Sometimes tradition becomes an excuse to ignore progress." A beat passed. Then Gerald slid a folder across the table. "Per company charter, this board may recommend a leadership transition. The enclosed proposal outlines a 6-month advisory handover." Claire spoke for the first time. "Excuse me. A leadership transition? For what exactly?" Gerald smiled without warmth. "For pursuing personal agendas under the guise of company policy." Nathan let the words hang for a moment. Then he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a different folder, one thicker, older, stamped confidential. Janet, his assistant, entered silently and distributed copies to each board member. "What is this?" Gerald snapped. "History," Nathan said calmly. "Our history." Inside were memos, meeting notes, internal directives, documents from 18 years ago, during Gerald's tenure as CEO. Each one outlining deliberate systemic measures to quietly filter out working mothers. Metrics designed to penalize employees who requested flexible schedules. Performance criteria written to disadvantage caregivers. Victoria paled. One memo, handwritten by Gerald himself, read, "We must avoid becoming a refuge for domestic distractions." Claire's hands tightened. And Nathan, for the first time that morning, let his voice rise. "For years, I thought my wife failed to return to work because she lost confidence, but she didn't. She was denied. She was shut out by policies crafted right here, by this board, to keep women like Claire out of the room." Gerald's face flushed. "This is ancient history." "No," Nathan said, standing. "It's personal, because it cost my wife her purpose. It cost my daughter a future." The room fell silent, and then Claire stood beside him. "My name is Claire Anderson," she said clearly. "I'm a project manager, a single mother, and I've spent most of my career trying to prove that I'm not a liability." She paused, scanning the room. "But this company gave me a chance. Not out of pity, but because someone finally saw past the resume gaps and bedtime schedules and saw my work." Her voice grew steadier. "You say I'm a symbol. Maybe I am. A symbol of everyone you quietly pushed out. But I'm also a warning, because we're not silent anymore." Victoria slammed her file closed. "This is turning into a spectacle." "No," James Whitfield said from the far side of the table. "This is accountability." He stood, looked around the room, then said, "I move that we not only retain Nathan Cole as CEO, but formally implement the Family Forward Initiative as permanent company policy across all divisions." "I second," said board member Martina Chen. Gerald shot up from his seat. "This is a coup." "No, Gerald," Nathan said softly. "This is a correction." When the vote was called, the tally was clear, 11 in favor, 2 opposed. Nathan stayed standing as Gerald gathered his things, face red with fury. Security would see him out. just as quietly as he had once tried to erase others. After the meeting, Claire sat alone in her office. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the sudden release of everything she'd carried. Nathan knocked once before stepping in. She looked up. "You knew it would come to this, didn't you?" He nodded. "But I didn't know how strong you'd be in that room." Claire laughed softly, almost in disbelief. "I've never spoken like that before." "Yes, you have," Nathan said. "You just never had a room that listened." That evening, back at home, Lily presented her science fair poster to Claire with a dramatic flair. "This," she said proudly, "is how volcanoes erupt." Claire stared at the colorful construction paper, the labeled parts, the glitter glue lava. And then she looked at her daughter, the same daughter who had once walked into an office tower alone, just to make sure her mother was seen. "You know, baby," Claire said softly, "some eruptions don't destroy. Some rebuild." Lily tilted her head. "Like ours?" Claire smiled, pulling her close. "Exactly like ours." 1 week after the boardroom vote, Elmridge Capital was different. Not in its glass walls or rising stock price, those remained, but in the hum of the hallways, the meetings interrupted by daycare pickups, the quiet nods exchanged between employees who had long felt invisible, and in Claire Anderson's calendar, which now included meetings with HR, legal, and the CEO, not as an observer, but as a collaborator. She had become something more than a project manager. She had become a spark. Nathan Cole stood at his office window, coffee in hand, watching a storm roll over the lake. Gray clouds churned slowly, hiding the skyline in mist. He wasn't thinking about markets or mergers. He was thinking about what came next. Behind him, Claire entered without knocking, the way only a few people were allowed to do. "You asked to see me?" He turned, and for a moment just looked at her. Not as a symbol, not as a decision, but as a partner in something neither of them could fully name yet. "Yes," he said. "I want to build something." Claire raised an eyebrow. "I thought you already built this." She gestured to the skyline behind him. "No," Nathan said quietly. "This was distraction, legacy, ego. I want to build something with meaning now." She sat down slowly. "What are you thinking?" Nathan pulled out a piece of paper, hand-sketched diagrams, bullet points, mission statements crossed out and rewritten. "At first, I thought about expanding the family forward policy nationwide, consulting other firms, lobbying quietly. But that's not enough." Claire leaned in, scanning the page. "You want to create a foundation?" "Not just a foundation," Nathan replied. "A movement. One that helps companies rewrite how they see working parents, especially single mothers. One that gives resources, mentorship, emergency funding, flexible design models." Claire looked up. "And you want me to help build it?" "I want you to lead it." She blinked. "I'm not an executive. You weren't a boardroom speaker either, until last week." She hesitated. Then, "What would we call it?" Nathan looked out the window again, then turned back. "The Lily Foundation." Claire's breath caught. "For your daughter?" "For all of them," Nathan said. "The ones who didn't have a voice, the ones who were told they were distractions, the ones who raised daughters with a résumé in their backpack." Claire's eyes misted. She looked away, then back. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Nathan said. She exhaled and said it. Yes. Later that afternoon, Lily waited outside her mom's office with her usual stack of crayons, business magazines, and chocolate milk. Nathan stopped by, leaned on the doorframe. "Miss Anderson, I have a job for you." Lily perked up. "Is it about volcanoes?" "Bigger," he said. "I need a chief testing officer." Lily blinked. "What's that?" "You'll test all the ideas for our new project. Kid spaces at workplaces, homework lounges, healthy snack menus, book nooks." Lily gasped. "I'm perfect for that." "I thought you might be," Nathan said. She jumped up and gave him a high five, then paused. "What are you going to do, Mr. Cole?" Nathan smiled. "I'm going to follow your lead." 1 month later, in a repurposed conference floor filled with sunlight and beanbags, the Lilly Foundation was born. Its mission was simple but revolutionary: to reimagine the workplace as a place where family is not a flaw, but a strength. It started with Elmridge. Then 5 other companies joined. Then 10. Nathan used his name. Claire used her story. Lily used her crayons. And, together, they built something no boardroom had ever imagined. That night, as Claire tucked Lily into bed, the little girl asked, "Mom, do you think all this happened because I went to that interview?" Claire paused, then smiled. "I think it started before that, when you saw something that wasn't fair, and decided to do something." Lily yawned. "Sometimes I was scared." Claire brushed her hair back gently. "Me too. But brave people aren't the ones who aren't scared. They're the ones who do it anyway." Lily's eyes fluttered closed, and Claire sat beside her for a long while, listening to the quiet breathing of the child who had walked into a glass tower and cracked it open. It arrived on a Tuesday morning, tucked quietly between reports and budget briefs. A manila envelope, unmarked except for a handwritten note across the front. "For your eyes only, from someone who remembers." Janet, Nathan's longtime assistant, placed it on his desk with a curious glance but said nothing. She knew better than to ask. Nathan stared at it for a moment. The handwriting looked familiar. His hand hovered, then opened the flap. Inside were photocopies, dozens of them, internal memos, board meeting transcripts, personnel records. Some were nearly 2 decades old. He recognized the headers, the formatting, but not the contents. He read the first one, then the second, and then his hands began to tremble. Back in 2007, during Gerald Harrington's final years as CEO, Elmridge had implemented a policy labeled Strategic Retention Metrics. It sounded harmless, but in one internal email, marked private, Gerald had written, "We cannot afford to weaken our leadership pool with candidates who prioritize family over firm. Consider performance scoring that subtly penalizes gaps due to parental leave." Another memo from HR flagged Caroline Reynolds Cole, Nathan's wife, requesting part-time return to work after their daughter's birth. The note beside her name read, "Potential risk of cultural precedent. Recommend discouraging flexible arrangement." Nathan froze. He remembered that week, the way Caroline's voice had broken when she came home. "I thought they wanted me back," she had whispered. "I thought they believed in me." But now he saw it. They never intended to welcome her back. And he, caught up in expansion plans and investor briefings, had never asked why. He thought she'd lost confidence. In truth, they'd taken it from her. One final page in the envelope nearly made him stop breathing. It was a newspaper clipping of the accident that had claimed Caroline and Lily, the one he had clipped out and hidden away for years. But this version had a post-it attached, in Gerald Harrington's handwriting. "Tragic outcome. Ensure Nathan stays focused. No family distractions moving forward." Nathan stood abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. For 17 years, he had buried guilt under glass towers and clean profits. But now, that guilt had a name, and a signature, and a long paper trail. That afternoon, Claire found Nathan staring out the window of his office, the documents spread across his desk like a battlefield. "Are you all right?" she asked gently. He turned to her, eyes storm dark. "Sit down." She did, and he told her everything, about Caroline, about the memos, about the culture he hadn't realized he'd inherited, or upheld. Claire listened in silence, her expression unreadable. Then she reached out, and for the first time since they met, touched his hand first. "Nathan," she said quietly, "this changes everything." He nodded. "It's not just about Elmridge anymore." "No," she agreed. "It's about what kind of world we're building, and what kind we're still letting survive in the shadows." That evening, they sat together in the small conference room that had become their unofficial war room. Claire laid out a proposal, a full transparency initiative, a public admission of past failures, a roadmap of change, not just for Elmridge, but for every company watching. "You understand," she said, "this could cost you everything." Nathan looked down at the silver frame on the table beside him. Caroline and baby Lily, both laughing. Then he looked up. "I already lost everything once." He picked up a pen, signed the first page. "We do this. We publish it. No redactions." Claire met his gaze. "Then we do it together." And, as they turned the pages, writing a new history in real time, neither of them saw the storm quietly gathering outside the walls. Because power, the old kind, doesn't go quietly, and someone, somewhere, was already planning how to strike back. 3 days after Nathan Cole signed the transparency order, the truth went public. The Elmridge Foundation, newly renamed to include the Lilly Initiative, released a full archive of historical documents, memos, transcripts, internal policies from the early 2000s, all outlining how working mothers were systematically excluded from advancement. The press called it corporate confession. The Wall Street Journal ran the headline, "Elmridge admits past bias against mothers, but claims the future is female." For 24 hours, the company was hailed as brave, progressive, pioneering. By hour 25, the knives came out. The backlash wasn't loud. It was strategic. The first article came from an obscure financial blog, quoting anonymous insiders who claimed Nathan was using the Lilly Initiative to distract from declining profits. A lie, but believable to those who wanted it to be true. The second came from a national outlet. "Is Elmridge becoming a daycare? Sources say productivity is slipping behind the smiles." Then came the headlines with pictures. A photo of Nathan walking Lily to the office playroom, framed to look like nepotism, not compassion. Another of Claire and Nathan at a speaking event, cropped so it looked like a date, not a keynote. And the most brutal, the CEO, the widow, and the narrative. Is this corporate reform or redemption fantasy? Claire sat on the edge of her couch that night, holding the paper like it might burn her hands. Lily had fallen asleep next to her, one arm draped across a stack of drawing paper labeled "My Future Office." When Nathan called, Claire answered without a word. "I never wanted this to touch you or her," he said, voice low. Claire exhaled. "It's not about what you wanted, Nathan. It's about what they fear." He was quiet. "They fear us," she said, "because we didn't stay silent." Inside Elmridge, the cracks deepened. Some managers embraced the Lilly Initiative. Others began citing disruptions, childcare conflicts, and lack of seriousness in the workplace. Victoria Langford's replacement in HR had gone quiet. Too quiet. Even James Whitfield, Nathan's oldest ally, pulled him aside one evening. "They're rallying again," he warned. "Not Gerald this time. Younger board members, investors, they think you're emotionally compromised." Nathan paced the room, fists clenched. "I've increased profitability. Retention is higher than ever." "They don't care," James said. "They want stability, and you're challenging their story of how this company was built." Nathan stopped walking. "Because that story is a lie." James didn't argue, but he didn't agree either. That week, Claire was invited to speak at a national summit on workplace reform. Her story had gone viral. The single mother who broke into the system and helped change it from the inside. Nathan watched her on stage from backstage, arms crossed, unreadable. Claire stood at the podium, strong and steady. "I didn't come here today as an activist," she began. "I came here as someone who got tired of being quiet." She told them about her job interviews, about the hospital, about Lily walking into Elmridge holding her résumé, and about the man who had looked past protocol and seen a person. Then she paused, looked out at the packed hall, and said the words that would echo far beyond that room. We don't need more rooms for women at the table. We need to ask why the table was built to exclude us in the first place." Applause thundered, and somewhere in the audience a journalist opened a fresh headline draft, this one with a different tone. But back at Elmridge, the storm wasn't over. When Nathan returned the next morning, Janet met him at the elevator, her face grim. "They've called another vote." He didn't need to ask what kind. "Emergency board session, Friday, closed door." He nodded. Janet hesitated. "They're saying it's about public image, investor confidence, but I think they're gunning for your seat." Nathan's eyes narrowed. "Let them try." Then he stepped into the elevator, and as the doors closed, his reflection stared back at him. Tired, weathered, but finally alive. He had once been the architect of a company built on silence. Now he was about to find out what happened when you gave silence a voice, and dared to listen. Friday, 9:00 a.m. The sky over Chicago was the color of steel. Inside Elmridge Capital's top-floor boardroom, the atmosphere was colder than the weather. 14 chairs, 12 board members, 2 names in the balance, Nathan Cole and Claire Anderson. When Nathan entered the room, he didn't shake hands. He looked at every face. Some glanced away. Some nodded with tight professionalism. 1 or 2 didn't bother hiding their disdain. James Whitfield was already seated, stone-faced, with a thick folder of documents in front of him. Claire entered quietly behind Nathan. She wore her simplest suit. No color, no embellishment. She wasn't there to impress. She was there to stay standing. The chairperson, a younger member named Carla Reed, once neutral, now visibly unsettled, cleared her throat. "This emergency session has been convened to address growing concerns over Elmridge's public image, internal alignment, and leadership direction." Nathan didn't blink. Carla continued. "In recent weeks, media scrutiny of the Lilly Initiative and its ties to executive leadership have prompted investors to question whether Elmridge's core mission is being compromised." James spoke then, calm but firm. "Our quarterly earnings are the highest they've been in 2 years. Staff retention is up 17%. Sick leave usage is down." A few members murmured in agreement. Others, not so much. A man at the far end, Alan Spence, old money conservative, leaned forward. "We're not questioning results. We're questioning intentions. This initiative was launched in emotional response to a personal loss." He looked at Nathan pointedly. "Is that true?" Carla asked. Nathan stood. "I built this company to be efficient, relentless, indestructible. And for years, I thought that meant inhuman." He looked at Claire. "Then someone walked in and reminded me that companies don't last because of numbers. They last because people believe they matter." Alan smirked. "And yet, you've built policies around one employee's story." Claire rose. "May I speak?" Carla hesitated. "You're not a board member." "But I am the reason this room is full today," Claire replied. Silence. Then Carla nodded. Claire stepped forward, voice even. "You all think this started because I'm a single mom, or because Nathan felt guilty. But the truth is, this started because a little girl did something brave. And the CEO, your CEO, had the decency to listen." She paused. "And that scared people." Alan folded his arms. "Courage doesn't replace competence." Claire smiled sadly. "Neither does fear." She turned to the others. "Do you want a company that only protects the powerful, or one that builds strength by standing up for the ones no one else will?" James cleared his throat. "I move to hold a formal vote on 2 items," he said. "First, that Nathan Cole remain CEO with full authority. Second, that the Lilly Initiative be permanently adopted and expanded." Carla looked around the room. "One by one, please." It began. Some votes came quick, a confident yes or a clipped no. Others hesitated. Then, one by one, the final count settled. 8 votes in favor, 4 against. Nathan exhaled. Claire closed her eyes. Alan stood abruptly. "This is a mistake." Carla looked at him calmly. No, this is a moment. After the meeting, Nathan stood alone in the boardroom for a long time. Not triumphant, not bitter, just quiet. Claire entered, holding a piece of paper. "What's this?" he asked. She handed it to him. A list of companies. Ones that had called in the last 48 hours, asking how to adopt a version of the Lily Initiative in their own organizations. He read the first 5, then stopped at the 6th. Briartech. Caroline had applied there once. They'd turned her down. He looked up. "What would you say," he asked slowly, "if we started offering consulting through the foundation?" Claire smiled. "I'd say you're finally dreaming in the right direction." Nathan folded the list and slipped it into his jacket. Then he looked at her, eyes steady. "We have 1 seat left at the board table." Claire blinked. "I'm not qualified." He shook his head. "You're not credentialed. There's a difference." He extended his hand. "So, what do you say?" Claire stared at him, the man who had once been the coldest figure in the tallest tower. Then she took his hand, and everything changed again. 1 year later. The lobby of Elmridge Capital didn't look the same. Gone were the cold marble walls and corporate silence. In their place stood bookshelves, plants, and a mural painted by children from the company's employee care program. Bright swirls of orange and blue spelling out one sentence: "You can work hard and still be someone's hero." Today, the lobby wasn't hosting executives. It was hosting a movement. Hundreds of guests, media outlets, CEOs, and policymakers had gathered for the national launch of the Lilly Foundation. No longer a company program, but an independent nonprofit leading the conversation on workplace reform for working families across America. Nathan Cole stood at the podium, no tie, no script. Just a small silver compass pin on his lapel, the one once belonging to Caroline, now the symbol of the cause. He looked out at the crowd, and then at Lily. She stood front row, holding a clipboard, wearing a navy blue blazer 3 sizes too big. Her badge read, Chief Testing Officer. He smiled, then began. 17 years ago, I lost my family, not just to tragedy, but to silence, to policies that made it impossible for my wife to return to work, to a system I helped build and didn't question. But then... He looked at Claire, standing at the side of the stage. A 7-year-old girl walked into my lobby, holding her mother's résumé, and asked for a chance. The room held its breath. That one interruption changed everything. Applause rippled through the space. Lily beamed. Nathan continued. We created the Lily Foundation not just to fix our mistakes, but to build something better, for the families we ignored, for the talent we overlooked, and for the children who deserve to grow up in a world where their parents don't have to choose between work and love. He paused, looked down at the front row. Lily? She stood. "Wanna join me?" She ran to the stage, no hesitation. Nathan picked her up gently and whispered, "You ready?" She grinned. I was born ready. Together, they hit the button that unveiled the new national partners joining the foundation. 20 Fortune 500 companies, and counting. The room erupted, and Claire, standing in the wings, wiped away a single tear. Later that evening, after the guests had gone and the cameras had left, the 3 of them sat on the rooftop garden Nathan had once built only for himself. Now it was theirs. Lily swung her legs over the bench edge, chewing on a cookie from the break room downstairs. Claire leaned her head against Nathan's shoulder. For a long time, none of them spoke. Then Lily broke the silence. "Mr. Cole?" Nathan turned to her. "Yeah? Does this mean we're a family now?" Claire tensed slightly, but Nathan didn't hesitate. He looked at her, the woman who had taught him how to feel again, and then back at the girl who had saved them both without even knowing it. "Families come together in different ways," he said gently. "Sometimes they're built from paperwork, sometimes from love, but the strongest ones," he touched Lily's hand, "are built from choice. Claire smiled, soft and full. Lily tilted her head. Well then, I choose you both. And that was it. No grand finale, no applause, just three people, under the soft lights of a rooftop garden, breathing in the quiet beauty of something unshakably true. They hadn't just changed a company. They had rewritten what it meant to belong, forever.